All right, here we are, guys. 2 down, 1 over. I'm Josh Mason. This is Matt Flanagan, and we have an awesome guest with us today. She is a performance physical therapist. She is a fitness enthusiast, and she's a high achiever. She's also the creator and the host of the Goal Set Mindset podcast. Please welcome Julie Burrill. How
Guys,
we doing, Julie?
thank you so much for having me. Pumped to be here.
Absolutely. We're super pumped to have you on. Last night, something great happened for me, and I'm in great energy and great spirits. As you can notice, the color of my sweatshirt, which we call Chief Red. So I'm feeling good today, Julie. I'm feeling good.
Hey, I'm happy to hear that. Send all those positive vibes right through the screen here. I'll take it all. Sorry, Matt.
I need some help today. I need some help. I'm an Eagles fan. I need some help today.
That's right. I love it. So Julie, yes. So 2 down, 1 over podcast. We're all about pulling the layers back on individuals that are chasing success, right? And want better from life, and the overachievers, and what are the tips and strategies and nuggets that people can use to level up or elevate themselves in whatever they're doing in their lives. So that's what we're going to kind of attack today. We're going to try to see your story and what's going on. For our listeners, would you just give like a brief background of yourself?
Yeah, I would love to. So my name's Julie Burrill. I currently live just outside of Baltimore, Maryland. I work as a performance physical therapist for a company called True Sports Physical Therapy. So my day-to-day is pretty awesome because I get to truly blend the worlds of physical therapy, rehabilitation, and strength and conditioning. I work in the walls of a CrossFit gym. So during my time with my patients, I work one-on-one, and I have access to all of the load, all of the equipment that I need, which is really cool because my first love really was strength and conditioning and fitness. Taking it back to college, I played field hockey at the University of Scranton during my time as an undergrad when I studied exercise science. And it was about like junior year of undergrad where I started to realize that I was like a total nerd and I just wanted to like dive into this shit. And so I decided to seek out an internship, worked with Matt, which was honestly a really pivotal point in my education where I was like, you know what, I'm not going to hold back my love for this stuff anymore and be like embarrassed of wanting to excel because I love it. So fast forward, went to physical therapy school, also at the University of Scranton. During my time there, got my CSCS and was able to serve as the strength and conditioning coach for a few of the varsity teams on campus. And just got a lot of skin in the game, learned a lot, failed a lot, fell in love with it. And then when it came time to graduate in summer of 2022, I was like, I want to do sports, which, you know, for you guys working in sports performance, as a physical therapist, it's pretty competitive to get a job truly in sports PT. And I say that not to say like, oh, I got this job. But a lot of companies will say like, yeah, you'll work with athletes and, you know, we got all this stuff. And then you go to the clinic and it's like, dude, you've got like 10-pound dumbbells. Like that's not going to cut it. And I don't say that to sound like a jerk, but you guys know what I mean. Like sure. People, humans, not just athletes, humans need load. So I looked for jobs all over the East Coast. I had these non-negotiables. I want a gym. I want a squat rack. I want to be one-on-one. And ultimately that landed me in Maryland. Never would have thought I'd move here, but I'm loving it so far. My boyfriend came here with me and things have really fallen into place nicely. So on top of that, running the podcast, it's a big passion project of mine. I love connecting with people like you guys who just love what they do, love to connect, and just helping to spread information about, like how we can pursue the best version of ourselves. So that's a little bit about me.
Nice. Yeah, I love it. It's funny because you said, like I realized I was nerdy or whatever. And like when you interned for me, I was always like, yo, she is so smart. I was like, I was amazed at how smart you were. And I love that. And I always admired that about you. And it's funny, because like just before we were talking about, you just said, oh, you know, Matt, thanks, and the internship. And that was a pivotal moment for you. And like, it's funny because now the tables have turned a little bit because I've taken admiration to a lot of the things that you've done. And your gratitude, your podcast, and you said that you've only been in for 6 months for physical therapy. I thought you had been there for years. And I've been following you on Instagram for a long time, and I see a lot of the stuff that you post and a lot of the drills and clients that you work with. So I thought you had been in there for way longer than 6 months. And I think you're doing a fantastic job. Just from an outsider's perspective, you're doing a fabulous job. And one thing that I was talking about with you earlier that I took off you is the gratitude. Now it's 5 things daily, right? So 5 things daily. And I had seen you do this for a long time, and you've done this. You're almost at 1,000 days, right? You're almost at 1,000 days. So I'm at like day 60-ish, and I'm starting to feel better. I'm starting to really enjoy it. Now it's a habit. So now for me, it's like I wake up and that's one of the first things I do. And I still get ideas from when you post it. But I'll talk about that a little bit and how that gets started, and where did you get that from? And thank you for doing that. And posting.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. I love talking about my experience with gratitude, and on the topic of when I kind of reached that point in my life of like wanting to dive deep into human performance. I don't know why I was so shy about it for a while. It was like I was embarrassed, I think, being like this athlete and trying to like be this type of person, and also realizing like, wait, no, like I also like love science, and I'm like, I had this identity crisis. But that being said, it kind of started with physical performance, learning about training and fitness and studying for the CSCS. And then I got to start to learn about mindset and how we can train our mind in a similar way that we train our body. And just like we train our body to be more resilient and perform better and overcome obstacles, we can do the same thing with the mind. So back in May of 2020 was one of the hardest periods of my life. Of course, COVID had recently started. Physical therapy school got like shut down. It was like, we're doing this at home. Like, how are we supposed to learn how to stretch a shoulder by ourselves? But on top of that, my dad was going through some pretty serious health issues, and I ended up moving in with him, kind of being his caretaker for a little bit, and was just struggling with a lot of anxiety. And at the time I was reading a book by Rachel Hollis, and she spoke about gratitude and how she writes 5 things per day. And the only rule is it has to be within the last 24 hours to truly center yourself in the present moment, instead of just writing like the roof over my head and my family. Like, as much as we're grateful for those things, like forces you to really dial in. So on I think it was May 25th, I went to Target. And of course, during COVID, like the only thing I did was go to Target because they were open and it was fun. And I picked up this notebook. I keep these right behind me. These are my first volume 1, volume 2 of gratitude. Got this little tiny notebook. It's smaller than my hand. And the first day is May 2020.
Nice. Oh, nice.
And since then, I have not missed a day. I've posted it on Instagram every morning. And this morning was day 994 of morning gratitude.
Wow. We might have still been in a shutdown on that day.
Right? Oh, yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
It was wild. It was at the time my dad was living in a small apartment in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. So that time was chaotic. It was obviously the virus and everything shut down. It was also like all of the riots going down. So like his area being close to Philly was like on lockdown. It was just chaos, right? Is like the way to say it. And that also was the day that I began studying for my CSCS exam. So I kind of paired these two things of like, all right, I'm going to focus my attention on something positive and exciting and encouraging, rather than sitting and watching the news with my dad and just being like, what the fuck is happening?
Right. Yeah. Seriously.
And, my big reason for posting it on Instagram was number 1, to hold myself accountable. When I started, I said, I'm going to do this for 30 days. They say it takes 30 days to kind of feel out if something's working. And then I got to 30 and I was like, all right, I'm gonna get to 60. All right, I'm gonna get to 100. By the time I got to 100, I'm like, I love doing this,
Yeah.
And as I started to do it more and gain more followers on my account, like being able to be vulnerable enough to like put a person's name or put a specific situation. Like if I got if I FaceTimed with a friend, right, because it was COVID, and writing like FaceTiming with Jamie before bed, and then her seeing that and being like, oh, thanks, Julie, like I really enjoyed it too. Like those little moments totally compounded. And to this day, I mean, I don't know how many people actually like read it, but I've had enough people reach out to me that I'm like, cool, this is making an impact. And Matt, hearing that you've kind of jumped on board with doing it is like super cool, because it's been life-changing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a huge habit guy. I love having good habits. So like, you know, I'll pray, I'll review my goals every day, I'll exercise every day, things like that. And the gratitude for me is starting to pay dividends, I feel like. And you're talking about 30 days. And I was just saying to you, like, I'm starting to feel better. And one of the things that I notice is I'm living in the moment a little bit more. And I had this moment this morning where I looked up at the moon. It was early. I went to walk my aunt's dog. I'm helping her out with her dog. And I looked at the moon and I just had a moment. And I was like, yo, this is a gratitude moment. And that's, for me, that's so beyond me, because my head is a million miles an hour. I'm always concentrating. Okay, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. So this gratitude practice for me, what I'm first noticing is, I'm in better moods, I'm starting my day off with gratitude, but I'm enjoying these little moments where, you know, just taking 20 seconds to look at the moon and kind of just be grateful for that. And it's slowed me down a little bit. So you talking about your anxiety, like I'm a very anxious person. I'm a million miles an hour all the time. And my mind is constantly going. So I feel like this is a great way to kind of combat that and work at it in just a really, really healthy manner. So,
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm super excited for you to reach 1,000.
Thank you. And I love that, Matt, that you mentioned, like, you had this moment where you're like, ooh, I can't wait to write this down. Like, this is a gratitude moment. That is what the whole practice is about. I think a lot of people look at gratitude and they're like, oh, it's kind of this like fake sense or superficial sense of positivity, or like, oh, let me just pretend that nothing bad's going on. Like, that's not really the point. It's to train your brain to pick those small little nuggets of joy out of your day and just like feel them and appreciate them. One of my favorite analogies for gratitude, and I don't remember if I heard this somewhere or if I fabricated it in my own brain, to be honest, but think about like when you go car shopping and like you look at a specific make and model of car. Like for me, when I was car shopping, I was looking at the Honda HR-V. I was like, I want this car, charcoal gray. I leave the dealership and all of a sudden, everywhere I go, there's gray Honda HR-Vs. Like, I'm like, whoa, like I never noticed this car before. Like now suddenly they're everywhere. And it's not that there was this big spike in sales of Honda HR-Vs. It's like they've always been there. My brain just had no reason to pay attention to it. And I feel like in our day-to-day, we pass by so many experiences and people and all these things, and we just, our heads down, we don't notice it. So by practicing gratitude, and there's neuroscience on this, which is where I nerd out, where they've done functional MRI studies over the course of like 8 weeks, 10 weeks, where they'll do literal brain scans of a person practicing gratitude. And then they do it for 8 weeks. They come back, they do the scan again, and they see that those happiness centers, those emotional centers of the brain actually grow stronger. It's almost like hypertrophy of your brain in a neural sense. And that is so cool, because like, just like training, like you're literally changing your brain by doing this stuff. I just think it's like the coolest thing ever, the way that we're designed.
Yeah. There's you know what, Julie, a couple things that you said during that, that hit on the head for me. First off, the mental training, right? Training the brain. So our motto in the gym is get your mind right. Right. So like, that's like what the gym is motto. And that's like my life mantra is get your mind right. So you're exactly right. Whatever you can position yourself into intake. So if you're on like a brain diet, right, and what you want to consume and what you want to bring in to your brain, the thoughts, your feelings, whatever that is, that's what makes the shift for you. So you said, hey, listen, I was in a bad spot. You know, I had anxiety, you know, we were in, not fair circumstances with your family or whatnot. but you decided to change your focus, right? So what I would claim is like, all right, you decided to get your mind right. And what you did is you wanted to only focus on the good. And it kind of evolved you in your thinking, your patterns, your habits. And then now you look at from that day one to this point, look what it created, right? So I love that story. And that's a great example, especially for our listeners, because that's what we tackle. Like, that's what we're saying. You do not have to be in the best situation. It's, hey, what do you do when you are feeling down, when you don't have direction, when you don't have focus, right? What are some things you can do? And this is a great example what Julie said. She said, hey, listen, I'm going to write a journal about gratitude, my daily gratitude. So, and it's almost like a domino effect. You know, you started one day and then 2 days and it so on and so forth. And all of a sudden, now your life perspective changes, right? And now you got the podcast, and you're doing great in your your job as a PT, and then people, you're even inspiring others. So I love that story, because it just makes sense, especially for those who think they're stuck or who need help or need direction. That's a great way to go, and I love it. So yes, get your mind right.
Yeah, thanks, Josh.
Right.
I love that. I just wrote down, get your mind right. I'm going to steal that. I'm going to say it to myself, and I'm going to use that too, because that's really good. And and what you said, it's exactly right. It's like, gratitude isn't about pretending that bad things aren't happening. Like in this, especially in that period when I got started, like there were times where I was just crying or just anxious and scared. And there was so much negative, but negative and positive things in your life can coexist, not at the same exact moment, but in the span of a day. And once those positives and joyous moments start to outweigh the negatives, you feel like a totally different person. And I love what you mentioned about like consistency and just building this up, and you have this transformation. It's just, once you start practicing mindset type strategies and building resilience there, I always use gym analogies, but it's just like you guys deadlift, right? Like, you practice lifting up heavy shit so that when your buddy's like, hey dude, can you help me move? You can lift up all these moving boxes and your back's not going to hurt. You're going to be like, I'm good. And your buddy's going to be like, oh shit, like my back's killing me, because you have bulletproofed yourself more so. You have a higher threshold for what it takes to knock you down. And I think mentally it's the same thing, where I used to be a lot more reactive and emotional and short-tempered. Now when things happen, like, doesn't mean you don't get upset. I'm never going to be the person who's like not emotional, because that's just who I am. But I know how to slow down a little more and like come back to myself and analyze the situation better. So yeah, it feeds into so many different avenues.
Yeah, I really like that. And you know, you just talking there made me realize, like, I take so many things for granted, so many little things. And that I feel like that's how I lived my life for so long. It's like I'm spoiled, you know? So this has really helped shed light on these little things and kind of help me. And another thing I gotta say is, like, I love this. And I hope the listeners really dialed in when you said you were only going to do this for 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was your original goal. Let's see how this worked out. And now you're almost at 1,000. And like, it's like nothing, right? It's just like another thing. And you ended up loving it, absolutely loving it, which is like incredible. And we did a podcast. One of our earlier podcasts was on habits. And like, that's a thing, like that is such a stronghold thing for the both of us. And like, that's one of the things that we try to, just start, all you have to do is start. And I got to ask you, because this is really like, I missed a couple of days, but then I just jumped back on. Have you missed a day? Have you ever missed a day?
So I am not the type of person who strives for perfection 100% in anything. But I will say, Matt, I've never missed a single day. The closest I've gotten to missing a day is like back in the beginning of my practice. I was still in college, and there'd be nights where we go out and I wake up at like 12 o'clock and I'm hungover and I'm like, oh man, I forgot to do my gratitude list. And I'll do it at like 1 p.m. But yeah, I've never missed a day. I've posted it every day, but that's not a necessity to get the benefits at all. It's the only thing in my life that is truly hasn't been uninterrupted, or hasn't been interrupted, I should say. And yeah, one more thing I want to bring up that you mentioned, Josh, in the beginning of this podcast, that you guys kind of center around like talking with people who are striving for success and that high achieving individual. I think that this kind of stuff, and something that I've learned, is being a high achiever is like awesome. Like you guys are, I am, that's why we're vibing right now. But it also can be really easy to get caught up in the future when you're a high achiever, because you're always thinking about those goals. You're like, yeah, I want to squat 325, or I want to make this amount of money, or I want to have this many clients. And when we are so goal oriented, it's hard to like ground yourself in the present. But if you're always living in the future, you're never going to enjoy the fruits of your labor and enjoy the now. So gratitude has also helped me. It's not perfect by any means, but like be a little bit more centered. And this is also where my meditation practice comes in, is another little time where I slow down. Because I have so many goals for myself. And like sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, Julie, you're 25. You got your whole life ahead of you to do all this stuff. Enjoy being 25. And gratitude helps that a little bit.
Yeah, Julie, I mean, that's a valid point. So as that high achiever or whatnot, you're right. We're always on to the next. It doesn't matter what, like, you could accomplish the goal, right? We celebrate small, very small. Like there's no, it's all right, got it done. Next, what's next? Got it done. What's next? Got it done. And that keeps going. And I'll tell you, even for myself personally, I've been wired like that for a while. But also I've noticed like anxiety like came into my life because of that, right? Because I didn't really have anxiety. I didn't feel like I did. And then in my latter years, it kind of came, but it's because I'm always jumping to the next, like, oh, what's this? I got to get this done. I got to get this done, but never really sit in the moment and embrace what you have accomplished or where you're at, right? So I think it is huge. And that's a big point to drive home, especially for the listeners, is sometimes you just got to be in the present. And this is, that gratitude list is an awesome way to be in the present. Beyond that, do you think there are any other tips or strategy to be like be in the present to kind of, stop from always reaching and looking ahead?
Yeah, for sure. There's so many different things out there to kind of practice mindfulness. The other big one that I've incorporated in my life over the last few years has been meditation. And meditation is one of those things. For the longest time, I was like, I am one of the most energetic, loud, like just ever since I was a little girl, like my report cards would be like, Julianne is doing really well in class, but Julianne distracts everybody. And like Julianne can't sit still. And it's just who I am. It's in my DNA, right? And you guys are laughing because I'm sure you can relate. So meditation never really was something that I thought I could do, because in and of itself, it's stillness. And when I met my boyfriend, he spoke to me about meditation and how it's influenced his life. And I'm like, yeah, I can't do that. I've tried. And he's like, of course you can. Everybody can. So I downloaded Headspace, which is a guided meditation app, which is awesome, because I think guided meditation is a great way to kind of introduce yourself to meditation, where you're in stillness, or maybe you're even like going for a walk, but you're just present with yourself. And you have a guide to kind of help you recenter, come back to your breath, come back to your feet on the ground, things like that. But you're not like totally by yourself. But yeah, I mean, especially if you're at a stage in life where you're doing a lot of things, you're embracing a lot of new experiences, you're setting new goals. Like, have you guys ever had those days where your brain just feels so cloudy and you feel like you're like digging a hole here, like going an inch deep and a mile wide sort of vibe?
Oh yeah.
I get caught up in that a lot. And when I sit down to meditate, one big misconception with meditation is that you're supposed to clear your mind of thoughts. But in reality, meditation is not the absence of thoughts. It's actually getting closer to your thoughts. And like seeing them come and go and deciding whether to engage and being like, oh man, these ideas for a podcast keep coming up. Like maybe that's something I should talk about. Or, that fight that I had with a friend keeps coming up. Like maybe that's something I should address. And it kind of just helps you like unravel and like sift through everything that's going on in your brain. And for me, it gives me a lot of clarity of like where my next step should be. And yeah, like there's apps, Headspace. I use an app called 10% Happier right now. There's YouTube videos. Like that's another thing I would say that's really cool. And from a mental performance standpoint, man, there's so much research using this stuff with athletes, doing body scans and like down regulating the nervous system and the impact that has on peak performance.
I like that.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
So a couple things, almost switching gears a little bit. So you're one of the smartest people I know. And I knew that for when you interned for me, I knew that right out of the gates.
Thank you, man. That means a lot to me.
Oh, and I mean that 100%. And now you're doing so much work on mindset. And where I'm going with this is your podcast, because I just started to tap into your podcast. And not only am I learning, X's and O's stuff about exercise science on your podcast, but you're mixing in the mindset as well. And your motto is, I hope I don't screw this up, is perseverance, perseverance meets performance and passion, right?
Passion.
All right, passion. Yeah. So to talk about that a little bit, kind of how you got started, and you said one of the biggest things is progress, not perfection. And we talked about you listening to the first couple of your episodes, and you're like, oh, I don't know, but you just did it. So talk about, how you got started with that and some of the things that you talk about on there and maybe some of the road bumps. And so.
Yeah. Podcasting's definitely a journey. It's super fun. It's also super cringy sometimes when you listen back to yourself and you're like, why did I say that? Or why did I ask that? But yeah, so podcasts have been a big part of my life since that same stage we were talking about when I decided to pursue an internship, and I made an Instagram account devoted specifically to fitness stuff because I was really loving scrolling through all these physical therapists and nutrition coaches who posted this content. And I wanted to message them, and I just didn't have it in me to use my personal Instagram, which at the time I was like a junior in college and posting like stuff of me drinking. And I was like, that's not appropriate. So I made Goal Set Mindset. And when I first made that account, I was like, I don't want anybody to know. I'm embarrassed, which is so silly. I tell everybody now, like, if you've got a passion project, make an Instagram for it. And I guarantee you there are at least dozens of other people doing the same thing, and you got to connect with them. But anyway, from there, started to find podcasts. And, when I would be at the gym working out, I'm listening to a podcast, or walking to class, I'm catching something. And podcasts just served as this perfect middle ground between education and inspiration for me. And probably like 2 years ago, I decided like I want to do one day, but it really wasn't something that I ever thought was soon. And then, we just talked about stillness and how sometimes moments of stillness, you have these sparks of creativity or inspiring moments. Summer of 2021, I was driving home from Philadelphia. I had just completed my first clinical rotation of PT school. I was living in the city, working at Thomas Jefferson. And I'm driving home, and when you're on the highway and you're just like in your feels and like thinking about stuff. And I was driving, listening to one of my favorite podcasts, which is the Muscle Intelligence podcast. I'd highly recommend checking that out. It's really good. But he was talking about kind of a mindset topic and how if you have this gut feeling, there's no perfect time. You got to just do it. So I'm sitting there and I literally said out loud to myself, I'm going to make a podcast. I'm going to do it. And I was all pumped up. And then by the time I actually got home to New York, I was like all in my shell again. I'm like, no, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. Nobody's going to listen. And I told my boyfriend, I'm like, I need to say this out loud because if I don't, it's not going to happen. But like one day I want to have a podcast. It's going to be called the Goal Set Mindset Podcast. I'm going to give weekly wellness tips. It's going to be mindset and fitness. And I just let it out. And he's like, great, let's do it. And I was like, maybe when I'm done with PT school. 2 days later, he hands me a box from Amazon and he's like, hey, I got you something. And it was this Blue Yeti microphone.
Nice.
And he's like, Julie, let's go, which very supportive partner. I'm very lucky, but also it just goes to show, like, when you have those moments, they're going to fade away. So you need to say them, you need to write them down, you need to capitalize on them before you second guess yourself. And yeah, it's been a year and a half. My mantra, so to speak, of passion, perseverance, performance was initially inspired by this book above me, Grit. Grit is one of the first like personal development books I ever read. Again, same time frame as the internship and all that. And it really sheds a light on the research behind mental performance and this idea that talent only takes you so far, that grit is truly what drives achievement. And I was so encouraged by that because at the time I was playing field hockey in college. I was a bench warmer. I didn't get much playing time. And I was so motivated to get the time I wanted. I read this book and I was like, I know I'm not that talented, but I'm going to have grit and I'm going to do this. And long story short, I never got the playing time I wanted. I never earned that starting position. It crushed me, absolutely crushed me my senior year. But about 6 months later, when field hockey was over and everybody was like, oh, we've peaked, we don't need to work out anymore. We're never going to be fit anymore. Field hockey and working my ass off and working towards grit made me fall in love with fitness so much that I was like, wait, it wasn't even really field hockey that I loved. It was training. Like, it was getting after it. It was hitting the PRs. It was overcoming my self-limiting beliefs. And I'm so grateful now that I never got to where I was where I wanted to be, as painful as it was, because that totally sparked. And I know you guys as coaches, you probably tell your athletes this all the time, and athletes don't want to hear it, but continuing to sprinkle that in. And I say that to my athletes too, like, you don't know it now, but the hard work that you're putting in now is going to shape your life going forward. Like, it was everything. So passion and perseverance was big in my life at that time. And then as a coach and a PT, I added in performance to that mantra. And yeah, so that's kind of what's my guiding light in the podcast.
That's awesome. Nice. Pain is a great motivator, isn't it?
It so is. When I think back to those moments, like those games that I was sure I was going to get at least 10 minutes, like I didn't want much. I just wanted to be on that field. And I was coming home after practice every day, journaling about what I did good and what I need to work on. And I was working so damn hard and seeing, and this happens on every team. You've got the players who are naturally talented, who don't give a shit, who are always like, making comments of like, oh yeah, I didn't do the summer conditioning, like showing off, who are throwing up, not even finishing the fitness test, and I crushing it. And none of that mattered to getting playing time. But also another thing I realized later on is like how inspiring it was to the girls around me, the girls younger than me, to see me as a senior lined up with the other girls in my class and me showing how much work I put in because I took all this time off my test. And again, a few girls at the time were like, Julie, great job. But it was like the year later when I was their strength coach and they're like, Julie, like, just so you know, like, I still think about like when you beat your time by 1 minute and 30 seconds. And like, I know I didn't say anything because I was nervous, but like, that was really cool. And like, it makes me want to work hard. And I'm like, whoa, like people watch that stuff. People care. So for you guys, setting an example for your athletes, I mean, I think one of the hardest things as a coach is we don't always get feedback of like, are kids enjoying this? Are they getting it? But I bet more people are than we think. And it's not until those moments later on where they're like, wow, that person was really impactful, Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing because I go back to even when I was younger and I was kind of had like the talent. I didn't have to really work hard. I was there. But I remember this one kid, he would be busting his ass in everything, like killing himself. And I would just look at him like, dude, why are you like, you're not getting faster. You're not getting stronger. Like, you're not going to play. In my head, and he would always give me and my buddy shit. Like, you guys don't even work hard. He's like, if I had that talent, like I would have worked harder. And at that point, it was just him talking shit to us. But then as I matured, I realized I was like, damn, I was cutting myself short. Like I was coasting. That's what I was doing. It was my talent was allowing me to coast. And this kid didn't have the talent, but he's going 110%. And he's looking at us like, dude, if I had that talent and I had those opportunities, I would take advantage of it. But we took it for granted. We took it for granted. It was just like, hey, well, we're just better. So I didn't need to work that hard. And I learned that lesson later in life. But like, damn, it goes back to something similar to your story where I appreciate that. And I wish I was dialed in then and could have saw what that was for, you know? So that was huge connection. I loved it, you know?
Yeah, it is. I think it's really relevant to a lot of people, not just young athletes playing sport, but like people in life, in their fitness or whatever it is they're striving for. Like so many of us just feel like we're never going to get there or we're not good enough. And when you reflect on the journey, that's when you realize like, oh, wow, I really have come far. And again, gratitude. Like one thing I'm getting into from a fitness standpoint right now is CrossFit. I just got my level 1 coaching certificate and I work in a CrossFit gym and I'm diving into that. And I look at these people, and you guys, I'm sure you know about CrossFit, like CrossFitters stereotypically are just like super fucking fit and they do everything. And they're doing the ring muscle ups and the handstand walks and all this stuff. And I'm over here like trying to get upside down against the wall. But the first day that I was able to hold myself in a handstand, that was a big win. And you already know that was the first thing on my gratitude list. Oh. And when I get down about the things that I can't do yet, I'm like, hey, well, you did that. And like, oh, I strict pressed 100 pounds. Like that felt good. And especially in performance, it's so important to like dial in on those little wins because that's what compounds. And it's hard to notice them when you're so caught up in like not being where you want to be yet.
Right.
I love it.
Great. So Julie, when you were, we'd like to wrap this up with a couple questions. So when you were local, you know, we're known for our pizza, right? We're known for the pizza Northeast up here. Was there a place that was your favorite?
So are you guys still in Dallas or where are you guys at?
So we're in, I mean, anywhere in Need.
Yeah,
I know
anywhere.
you were mostly in Scranton and you know,
yeah,
in Dallas a little bit more, but anyway, in Northeast PA, think Northeast PA.
Okay. I mean, so I'll be honest, I definitely was not a pizza connoisseur of Northeastern PA because I'm from the suburbs. I'm from the suburbs of New York City, guys. Like I have really high standards, but the only time that I've truly had pizza that wasn't like the dollar slice at the University of Scranton bar, because of like, that's where I had most of my pizza, was the Italian festival downtown.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Yeah. And I think that the spot that I really enjoyed was Electric City Pizza. And they had this eggplant slice. It was like thin sliced eggplant with like sauce and cheese on it. And I just remember that being like so good. Nice. But that's the only thing that comes to mind in the pizza category.
That's all right.
Electric City, that's okay. Pizza. That's all right. Now, next question. All right. Is there a motto that you live by, a day-to-day motto that you live by, and what is it?
Yeah, there's a few things that I tell myself, but a big one that's come up for me a lot recently is comfort is the enemy of growth.
I like it. Yeah.
There's another similar one to that. Good is
the enemy of great. Good is the enemy of great. Yeah, or you know, comfort zone is where your dreams go to die.
Yeah. But I dig it. I dig it. Because you got to be uncomfortable. We just had a podcast where we said success is uncomfortable, right? So if you avoid the uncomfortable, like you're probably not going to be successful, you know? All right. So Julie, you are writing a book. What is the title of this book?
Ooh, that's tough.
It's a good one though.
Probably it would probably be a book that I would be writing to myself. But I think I would call it Live in the Now.
Live in the Now.
Nice.
I like it.
Very
Mindfulness, good. Right?
Mindfulness. Yeah, it goes along.
Yeah.
I like it.
What about what's one book that you would say helped change your life? Is it the Grit book?
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. But since I already talked about that, I'll give you another one.
Sure.
All the books that are behind me right now, you guys probably can't really see them, but those are like some of my most influential. A big one that has really influenced me as a coach and physical therapist is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Wait, we missed that.
Yeah,
I
say,
think
say it again. It just
yeah, say
froze
that
up for a
again.
second.
Oh, sorry. A big one that I read maybe like a year and a half ago, but is really becoming relevant for me now is Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Oh, it's the enemy.
Yeah, I like
man,
that.
that's true too.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Smash a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
It's a hard reality check type of book, but it's, especially if you work in the industry of human beings, like it's a really, really good book to read.
Yeah. Ego is the enemy. I'm gonna jot that one down. I like to listen to books on Audible.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, but Julie, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm super proud of you. I was really looking forward to this podcast today. This is like, I had a rough night last night. The Eagles lost.
Yeah,
I got up this
night.
morning. I know. Oh, no, you did. I got up this morning. I did my gratitude list, and I was really looking forward to this. I loved catching up. I love all the things that you're doing. It looks like you've been doing PT for years. I know it's only been 6 months. I love your podcast, the gratitude practice. Everything is awesome. So I'm super proud of you. Thank you so much for being on this. This is a really cool one for me. So appreciate you.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. I'm excited to share this conversation with my audience as well. And next time I'm up in Northeastern PA, I'll let you guys know. Would love to come see the spot.
Oh,
yeah, we're gonna
100%.
take you out for some good pizza. We're taking
pizza.
you out for pizza.
And Julie, before
All
you
right,
go,
perfect.
please list all of the platforms that people can reach out to you and connect with you.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the most active on Instagram. You can find me over at goalsetmindset_JB. You can also search my name, Julie Burrill, and you will probably find it. The podcast is available on all audio platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, and a bunch of random other ones. So check me out, the Goal Set Mindset podcast. We've got weekly episodes centered around mental and physical fitness, some of which are long interviews, some of which are quick 15, 20-minute mindset tips from me. So would love if you guys check that out. And I'm in the works of building a website. It's not out yet, but when it is, it will be thegoalsetmindset.com. So
Nice.
That's where you guys can find me.
I love it.
Awesome.
I love it. Make sure you guys check in. Yes, it was awesome having you, Julie, and I'm sure we'll connect again. And especially if you come back into town, we'll take you out for a good slice of pizza and we'll have some good conversation.
We'll love that. We'll
Okay.
plan on it at some point, guys.
Yes, and let us know if we can ever help you and vice versa. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. All right, guys, this is 2 Down, 1 Over. I'm Josh. This is Matt, and this is Julie, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
See ya
later. So, Julie, real quick, thank you. That was awesome.